Hi, Susan Clare here, GourmetQuilter. Thanks for being here. I'm here to show you the final part of the sew along that we've been doing. We've been going for 7 weeks, so this is week 8. It was an 8-part sew along, and we've been making different blocks. There's some of the blocks and things that you can see up behind me. And this is the final block that we're doing. So it's called block 7, even though it's part 8. Because we've done 6 different blocks, and then we've done another block that's an alternating block that is creating this chain, which you can probably get a little glimpse of when it's folded, as our 7th block, except that we numbered them differently. You know what it's like. So in part 4 we showed you how to do the quilt as you go, so I haven't quite finished quilting my other colourways, but I thought I'd show you on this one how I've gone about this final block. So I've already made one of them. There's one set in here amongst my blocks ready to finish the quilt. So it's this block here that we're doing, which I can show you in the blues. Haven't quilted this one yet. And then with my darker background, it's the same block here. So in the notes I've suggested you could cut one larger square for the centre, a 4.5-inch square. But if you're working with 2.5-inch strips, that's not going to work so well. So you may want to do 4 smaller squares. As I've done in the blue one here, I've done there, and I'm doing that in this final block here. So I've gone ahead and done most of the block because we've done all these things before. We've made these units here with the half square triangle units in an earlier part. We've made the unit along the sides, which is a flying geese unit. And so I really didn't think I needed to show you all of those again. You've got all the notes, you've got the videos. So I just need to go ahead and finish this block. I just wanted to show it to you before it was finished so that you could see exactly what I've done. So I've made my corner squares, I've made my sides, and I've made my centre with the 4 squares. I've attached the sides to the centre, I've attached the corners to the sides. I just now need to join those together, and then as we've been doing, pop the frame around all 4 sides of the block to bring it up to size, and then I'll need to quilt it. I've got all my batting and backing ready here to do the quilt as you go, so block by block. So, and again, I mentioned that we showed you that in part 4, so it's all there for you to see. So I'll go ahead and get a whole lot of this ready. I've then got to join up my final row. So I've done most of the quilt. So I've got 3 blocks here of my final row, but I needed this one to go in next, and then the other block on the end, which I've already done one of the alternate blocks. And then join the final row onto the others. The joining of the rows is just the same as joining the blocks together. It's just a much longer seam, and you have to match the little seams. So I might show you when I'm just popping that together, but in the meantime I'm going to get the whole block ready, quilted, and the row done so that I can show you that last bit about just joining up the rows, and then we need to get it bound. How exciting is that? This sew along block is going really well. So I'll see you shortly with all these little bits and pieces done. So I've gone ahead, I've done my block. I have done my block. Here's the block that I've just finished. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's sitting in there. I joined it up into the row, so I've got all my strips like we did with the quilt as you go in part 4. And now I'm just joining the row together. So it's just the same as when we do the blocks. It's just a whole lot longer because it's got to go all the way across the quilt. So what I've done here, because when we pop the strips on, they just stick out just a little bit. I'm just trimming those so that they're sitting nice, everything's nice and level. And then when I'm matching, so this is where the blocks join just here and here. So I'm just matching that seam as I put it all together, and I'm popping the binding in too. So it may be helpful. I find because it's getting a little bit bulky, the clips are easier for me than pins. However, if you don't have clips, pins work really well, as long as they don't attack you. So I would then just keep my binding strip coming along, sitting nice and flush with those edges, and pop that clip in there, and then pop 1 or 2 in between, whatever you're comfortable
with so that everything is sitting, keeping all those edges sitting nicely together, because it's not a huge seam that we're taking, and we want to include all the little edges as we need to. So my binding's only just, it's a fraction longer, and that's fine because that's all it needs to be. It could be a little bit longer than it is, but this is the way it is. So I'm just going to pop those edges of the block together and clip. So as I said, just the same as doing the block joining, we're just extending it a little bit more to do the row joining, but the same process. Just have to take a little bit of care to match up the front of the seams when you pin that together. And then there's just this long seam that I have to come all the way along here. So just the same, it's my 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to flip it over just the same as I did when I was doing these shorter lengths here. So no difference, it just takes a little bit more time because they're longer. So I'll go ahead and get that done, and then we can get the binding on. So I'm just coming along, finishing off joining the row, again in just the same manner as I did when I was joining the blocks together, just going all the way along. So it's just have to take your time. I pressed all the binding, I pressed that seam open just like when joining the blocks, and I pressed my binding over, and I'm just making sure that I'm going to catch it all down now, either side of the actual seam. So it's that simple really, a little bit of fun. You just need to take your time and a little bit of care doing this part, or you might prefer to be doing that stitching by hand, but I like to get mine done on the machine. So I'll keep going, and then I can show you the whole quilt, and we've just got to do the binding next. So I'm absolutely thrilled. This quilt is coming up so well. I'll show you the whole quilt very shortly. I've got it so that I've got to do my binding now. So because we've already trimmed our blocks, and when we've joined our rows, I've just got to snip off my little bits that are sticking out at each of the joins all the way around, and then I can just apply my binding the way you normally add a binding to a quilt. Now I like to do mine by machine, so I like to add it onto the back. I stitch it to the back and I roll it around over to the front, and then I machine stitch it down on the front. Many people like to attach it to the front, roll it, turn it round to the back, and then hand slip stitch it to the back. And that really is entirely up to you how you like to do yours. I have another video that shows you how I apply my binding, so there's a link to that video. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead, trim off my little bits, get my binding on, then I'll come back and I'll show you the whole quilt so that you can see it all done front and back. So I'm super excited. I'm just coming around the last corner of the binding. I thought you'd like to see the last little bit going on. So I'm machining it down on the front. Oops. And I've got just this corner, so I just like to do this little foldy bit here to make that sit like a nice little mitre. Leave the needle down and pivot, and then I always like to do a little back stitch at this point, just to make sure I've got that corner all together, just a stitch back like that, and then round, and I'm nearly finished. I should join up pretty soon. It's been so much fun doing this sew along. Thank you for sewing along with me. And here we are, back where I started. So I am absolutely finished with the binding, finished with all the blocks. Oh, I'm not sure how to show it to you when I've got a table in the way. Let's have a look. Hopefully you can have a good enough view of it. And then the back of it is kind of fun because I've alternated reds and greens with my blocks, and that little red and white stripe for the joining strips. It's kind of like a double-sided quilt. Now of course I've gone ahead and used some nice holiday Christmassy type colours because of this time of year, but you don't have to. As I showed you, I haven't managed to finish my other two yet, but I've got my one in blues
to finish off here, I've been quilting. I haven't quite finished quilting all the blocks, but I've got some of them quilted, and then the one, same thing, I managed to quilt all these ones with a dark background, but I haven't got them all joined up yet. But I've got this section here joined up with the, just use one fabric on the back and the different, and then it's just a little dark stripe for the joining strips. So that's coming up really nicely. So still quite a bit for me to do, but I thought you'd like to see this one complete in those lovely fun holiday style colours, not particularly Christmassy fabrics, they actually are batik fabrics, but I think with all that looking really nice on the back with the alternating colours, different fabrics, and then just that little stripe that I feel just brings it all together. So thank you so much for being with me for this sew along in 2021. It's been 8 parts. This is part 8, the final part. And there's always something going on at GourmetQuilter.com. Don't forget the patterns available on GourmetQuilter.com to download. And other than that, I am here frequently. I will show you all sorts of other things to do with mostly quilting, but sometimes something else. So thanks so much for being with me for the Sew Along 2021, and I hope you have enjoyed it too.